So I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utilities District Board of Directors. It's Saturday, May 22nd, and it's 8:01 a.m. Peter, may we have the roll call, please?
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, good. Yeah, Rickert.
Here.
Epstein.
Here.
Burrow.
Yeah.
Schroeder. Dornbrook here. 4 out of 5.
Okay, and Eric, if you let us know when John joins, that'd
Yes,
be great. Do you have any announcements, Eric?
Just like to welcome everyone to this special board meeting, which we scheduled on the day we were going to get snow in May. So good planning on the president's part. If anyone would like to make a comment or ask a question, please use the raise your hand function in Zoom. And the meeting, all votes will be taken by a roll call. John has arrived.
Oh, hi, John. Good. Are there any corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, are there any comments from the audience on matters not on the agenda today? No raised hands, Eric?
I see John is here.
Yes.
Yeah, John's here. Are there any raised hands on comments from the audience?
No, sir.
Okay. And I don't believe there were any written comments for this meeting from the public.
That is correct.
Okay, we'll move on to item 7, items for board action. The first one is item 7A, fiscal year 2021-2022 general manager objectives. Eric, take it away.
Yes, the only one that was added was communications, which they had not had the opportunity to meet. So they added one objective for the website.
And may I just clarify, Bob, maybe you could answer this. Is this going to include a tab for important documents?
Yes, but we've already put that in.
Oh, you have?
It just needs to be, expanded.
Okay, and then the things like budgets and studies, et cetera, would be plopped in there.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Thank you.
So I actually have a comment on that goal. I think most of the goal we try to actually have a deliverable and time to deliver. So I just wonder if we should do the same on this one.
We should, because this is kind of vague, but I ran out of time.
Okay.
So I would hope to improve it before we finalize the budget. Eric, I have one thing that's not in here because it doesn't fall within a committee that I'm in, but that's really, if we approve the change to the rates, there's an expectation that there'll be increased interest in electrifying heating and EVs. Yet I think we need some sort of goal that we're going to either do a project within one of our own facilities or do something to advance the knowledge of what works. I think we have to provide some form of leadership in what's available and what can be done. And I just want to see whether other people agree and where that might fit in.
So just to clarify, you're saying that, for example, what methods of electric heating, the heat pumps, resistance, et cetera, might be feasible, for example, or locations for electric vehicle chargers, or what the schemes are with ChargePoint versus Tesla versus your own house. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, the main thing I think I would focus on here is just increasing the knowledge of what's available for electric-based heating.
What I'd like to add to that, to what you describe, Eric, is almost belong more to planning committees and communication.
Yeah,
the goal for this one is actually to have a deliverable that we have actually communicated to the community what on these 3 topics, which I think are quite important, yes. And that should happen in this fiscal year. So people are aware
across 3 committees. So you could land that in 3 different committees in my mind. 1, planning for the conceptual, 2, operations for the implementation portion of it, and then communications to share that with the community. So
yeah. So what
would add it to ComCom, but we would start it in planning and then move to ops, and finish it in ComCom.
I totally agree with that. But here, since we don't have much, basically what I would agree with Bob that we should have a goal that we communicate to the community on. So we want to make it easy for people to make this decision. So we want to deliver that information to them. So there is some upfront work that needs to be done both at planning and operation. But here, I would have a goal that by this fiscal year, we deliver information to the community for the impact on the rate change and how to be more efficient and all these things. Yes.
Yeah, I think we could land it in communication, Bob, but I would just, we would just start it and finish it with you, start it elsewhere, finish it with you.
Yeah, I'm open to whatever makes sense, but just for example, how old is the heating unit? Any of the propane uses by the district itself, are any of them old enough that it's worth transitioning them to an electric option? Someplace where we either can work with somebody who's doing this or do one ourselves, just so there's some operational experience.
So I've got a suggestion then. I would like to suggest that in planning, I don't know if we're just adding a goal, but planning would, I know you've already started this, Bertrand, but planning would do some research
Yes.
On feasibility of things, of whether it's heat pumps or, I know that's already begun, chargers in various locations, et cetera. And operations would look for opportunities, with Rick and Brandy and the team for applying those things to our own facility, if there is an opportunity that's cost effective. And then communications, of course, by the end of the fiscal year would communicate what we've learned. Yeah.
Excellent.
Here, what I captured, and I'm sure I didn't get all of it, but what I said was, and I put it in communications, develop and deliver information on electric rate study, electrification, and EV charging by June 30th, 2022.
That's fine.
That's fine for me too.
Okay, Bob, thanks for bringing that up. Good idea.
Yeah.
So,
and so we also add some kind of June 22 on the first goal as well, just to be consistent with everyone else.
Sure. By the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
Okay, then are we
thank
ready? Thanks, Bob. Are we ready to approve this set of objectives then with those changes? Do I hear a motion to accept these objectives?
Yes, so moved. Dornbrook.
Is there a second to that motion?
Abstain seconds.
Okay, a roll call, please, Peter.
Rickert.
Aye.
Epstein.
Aye.
Perot.
Aye.
Schroeder. Aye. Dornbrook, aye. It's unanimous.
Great, thank you. Move on to 7B. This is Resolution 21-08, Adoption of Utility Physical Security Plan. Eric.
Sorry, I was saving the changes, so I had them captured. So we're required to adopt a new physical security plan as part of the jurisdiction of CPUC as well as CEC, which they've delegated that down to the districts themselves. So we did develop our physical security plan. We then submitted to an independent third party, which was the Alpine County Sheriff's Office, reviewed that for us. And then we needed a qualified reviewer, which in this case is our fire chief and assistant general manager as a qualified reviewer. He reviewed the final plans and incorporated the comments from Alpine County Sheriff's Office. This was reviewed by the Operations Committee prior to going to the Alpine County Sheriff's Office. So they saw a slightly older version, but all we've done is add the comments from Alpine County Sheriff's Office. So we're asking that the board adopt the security plan so we can submit it and be in compliance with the requirements of SB 699.
Okay, thanks. Okay, board, any questions or comments on this matter?
This is Bob. I have one question. So this first of all, I think it's fine the way it's done. And what we've done is just verified that, you know, we don't have any situations that meet their criteria. But I'm just curious, this only applies to electricity and not propane.
That is correct.
And can I use this opportunity to say, in the past, we've discussed how exposed our propane situation is. And I'm just wondering whether there's any update on that. And if that's outside of topic, I'm happy to withdraw the question.
I don't have a general manager discussion on this, so it's not outside, it's security. So I'm just going to answer where we are. We actually have had the district engineer looking at the topic of since planning is looking at propane, and then that'll obviously go to operations as well. But since planning started on that, I went ahead and talked to the district engineer to just have him look at what would it be to expand tanks to allow additional usage. As part of, so we didn't look at security as part of that, but what I can tell you is adding tanks is going to be a significant issue for the district as well as the residences. And so we'll be bringing that back to planning, but I can ask them to incorporate a physical security component on that. We can discuss that at planning, Bertrand. And if, I think it's appropriate to discuss that, but if that's okay with you, Bertrand, I'll have him work on that and we'll bring it to planning like we discussed earlier.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I totally agree that we need to look at it at the same time. I mean, so yes, this is overdue and we can start looking at it at planning.
Okay, thank you.
I think Peter will confirm this has been looked at to some extent in the past, right, Peter? I mean, it was
Right.
looked at building a masonry wall around the tanks and some sort of lock-offs at the vaporizers and so on.
We're definite. To me, it's definite vulnerability.
Yeah. So it's a good thing to look at.
Okay.
Related to this, I mean, it's not physical security, but what have we done for an audit of cybersecurity protection?
We've actually gone through that pretty extensively, and just recently as well. In fact, I had to fill out a cybersecurity 24-page questionnaire, and I did that with our consultant Steve King from Wired Direct, and we went through that and lots of questions about firewalls. All of our stuff is updated as soon as patches come out. It's updated within 24 hours. You know, a lot of our stuff stands alone, so there's no remote access to it. And where there is, we do have firewalls in place. So we are in a very good position. We have regular meetings discussing cybersecurity. Mostly all the things that have happened have been phishing scams of all the recent hacks.
Right.
So we do a lot of training internally, and Bob, you know, when it was still the IT committee, we actually got a lot of papers, and I know I've shared with Bob and Eric stuff that's been coming through my desk from our trade organizations that was also shared with our employees. So we're really active on that end.
Good to hear.
I would add to that our biggest strength is the fact that the operational part of the electric thing is not on the network.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the best security there is. I think Eric's right that the way to, if you want to penetrate this, you're gonna try to get somebody's password or guess it, and that's the ultimate vulnerability. Are people falling for a trick? And we know that happened once 4 years ago.
So should that actually be a topic for communication committee? So we actually educate our community on that topic.
Well, it's the staff.
Yes,
where
staff.
the risk is. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I'll make sure we add that during the course of the year to just. It's a good thing to constantly look at.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree.
I would caution against drawing attention to ourselves by advertising what we do.
No, absolutely.
Security.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They are targeting small districts.
Yeah.
We're not immune just because we're small. They are targeting small districts.
Right.
And I love the idea to know that the electrical stuff is not online.
Right.
I think we should keep it this way.
Yeah, it's a direct communication line between the powerhouse and KM Green and KM Blue. It's just direct. They'd have to physically go hack into the fiber.
Don't give them clues there, Eric. Okay. Can we I'd like to entertain a motion for resolution number 2108.
Dornbrook, so moved.
Second.
That's John, seconds. Roll call.
Rickard,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's move on to item 7C, snow removal fiscal year 2021, 2022 budget. And before I turn this over to Eric, I would like to suggest sort of an order in which we tackle this. It's most important right now to agree on an overall budget number. So what should that be? I think there's a proposal in the staff report for that. The second thing that's important to nail down is what portion of that budget should be allocated to KMPUD, or sometimes called lava rock, because that will affect the G&A allocation expense across all the departments. Then the third thing, of course, is the allocations to HOAs and or contract driveways. And at minimum, it'd be great today to agree on how we're going to do that. My guess is there are going to be some questions and concerns expressed that may not be able to resolve today, but at least get those things out on the table. So board, may I ask, is that structure, is that order of conversation okay with you? Does anybody have a different idea?
No, I like it. And I'd like to add one thing, that before we actually delve into the HOAs and driveways, I'd like to discuss on the process before we go to the substance. And,
yes, the process, the architecture of doing it. The process. Right. That's what I'd like to kind of settle on today if we can.
Yeah, excellent.
And then the specifics of it, we can, actually, like I said, I think we're going to be questions, there are going to be some concerns, and it's going to require a little bit more staff work probably to answer those things. Okay, so Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you to discuss the overall budget.
Okay, so we have the projected year-end actuals that Kelly has prepared, just based on where we think we're going to end up. Mostly it's just G&A at this point, and our mechanic working on the end of the year stuff. So that's really what's been projected into the year-end actuals. So that's where those come from. We feel pretty confident that we're going to end with a surplus. We are proposing to double the interfund loan payback to electric, and we'll run through that. So one thing to note that may be confusing to people is KMPUD interfund revenues. That since the board voted to put KMPUD CSB into a HOA block, that number is now up here. So that's why that is now zero from in perpetuity. It's up in the HOAs now for the CSB. So that's why that moved. Really looked at our next big purchase, which is the trackless we are proposing to purchase.
Oh, I'm confused here. You say CSB, meaning community service building, I suppose.
Yes.
But I thought we were talking about lava rock. Lava rock being.
Lava rock is the CSB. It's all considered the same landmark.
Okay. So we are not on. Okay. So
lava rock and CSB are interchangeable.
Okay. So it actually addressed both the staff housing and the community building.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you for clarification.
No, and you raise a good point, Bertrand. So I'll add on to that. When I first got here, snow removal was doing our snow removal crews were doing snow removal at our utility facilities. That is no longer the case. Our wastewater operators and water operators do their snow removal around their facilities, and the electric propane operators do their snow removal around their facilities. So snow removal does not do utilities anymore. So therefore that's not included in here because they don't do it anymore. So it's just.
But do they use actually the equipment of the snow removal department, or do they have their own?
They sometimes use, it depends on what's happening around the radiators. For example, that's trackless work, but they also have walk behind units. Yeah.
So they do use the SR department equipment.
They use the equipment. Yeah.
So at some point that needs to be tabulated. Yeah.
I have no way to calculate that.
Yeah.
I have no way to calculate that.
Proceed with the overall budget question.
Okay. So anyway, so we do have an expense coming up of purchasing a new trackless this year. So I built a budget around trying to be able to have enough cash to facilitate that, which we did. And then we have another one coming 3 years after that. So I started building up again. It falls off here. It's at 2027, but that's a long-term budget. So I not only can we repay, I believe, the interfund loan, but we also can set aside enough cash to purchase that without having to take any loans or borrow from electric. So that, and we're holding the budget constant at $680,000 we're able to do that and achieve that goal. So
Eric, I couldn't quite follow you. What year do we purchase a new trackless? What budget year?
So these are the capitals down here. So the 158 is the trackless. That's the year we purchased the trackless. It's in there. And then the next one is over here, but it doesn't show because it's 2027.
So why do we have 93K on 2022 budget instead of?
Because that's what was adopted in the capital plan that the board already adopted.
Yeah, but so do we have any specific purchase plan for next year?
I mean, let me pull up the capital budget, which you have.
But
Yes,
is that line item debt service?
No. Oh yeah, interest expense. Yes.
Yeah, so there's still interest here. This is the last year of interest we have on the current track list as well. So there's interest in here and
interest and principal,
correct.
Right? Okay.
Correct.
Yeah,
so those numbers reflect payments for stuff we already purchased in part.
So what I'm surprised
there was a balloon payment on the track list.
Right.
Oh, there is a balloon payment. So that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my question. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, okay, so Eric, you're proposing a budget of $680,000 approximately?
That is correct for the next 5 years.
And it would just continue on. Okay, are there any questions from board members? Obviously entertain questions from the audience as well.
That would be contingent on nothing breaking, obviously, or major purchases, but that's our best guess.
Right.
So I just want to clarify. So the $61,035, that's the total amount. That's the KMPUD share of the revenue of payments.
That's what KMPUD is paying this year. This last year we budgeted. That's what KMPUD was supposed to pay or is paying for snow removal.
And that would continue.
Yes,
just in a different line item.
It just continues up there.
And at a far lesser amount.
Correct. I'll get to that, but yes.
Yeah,
I guess that was my question.
Okay, so
before you.
All right, we'll cover that later, Eric. That's fine.
Yeah, well, that was the second thing I wanted to be sure we understand is what we think KMPUD or Lava Rock or CSB should be contributing to this, what they be allocated. But I first want to nail down the overall number.
Sure.
That's being proposed 680. I do have a question, but I want to make sure other questions are addressed.
I do have questions actually, a question/comment. So first, and that's part of the. So we decided there would not be any more curation or testing for transit and other things like that. So. And so we were told it was very expensive, and I'd like to have a clarification on the number. And then that means in the future, that should be savings that I'd like to see reflected somewhere. Also, we are moving to this new model, which we are told is going to be more efficient. And so anyway, I'm expecting that in the future with this change, it's going to be more efficient, and we should have cost benefit here and savings. And I think it's also important, since we are weaning ourselves from the interfund loan, that once we finish paying back, we also see some kind of impact on the budget. So in general, having a budget static like that for 5 years doesn't sound good to me. I mean, typically there is a CPI increase, there is an inflation consideration, and there is capital expenditure. So I just find it a bit not detailed enough and not customized enough. I think it's just too broad of a brush to paint these pictures, and I wish we had a little more detailing on that budget.
Well, I think Bertrand, if you look at the expense lines, those things are included. And then the summary of expense lines, goes from 680 down to 678, down to 659, to up to 683, up to 694. And so by 2026, we're in negative territory, right? $14,000
So
negative,
yeah,
but it's covering our cash needs. So I think that's what Eric is doing. He's got the revenue flat because
Expenses are dropping.
Incorporating everything that you're talking about are enabling that to remain flat at this point. I mean, from a planning perspective. I mean, what will actually happen, who knows? But that's those things you're talking about are in the expenses.
Well, actually, I don't see it this way because I don't think the number reflects the magnitude of the savings we are making here.
No, that's a different question. Yeah, because and actually, Bertrand, that's my question too. But
yeah, okay. Because last year Eric told us we spent 64 hours doing curation. That's a lot of time and money. So this year he didn't do it, but we did the testing for the videos. That was also a lot of time for Rick. So clearly, since we are not doing these things, I'd like to see an impact on these expenses, and I don't see it the way it is in a proportional fashion.
Yeah, I'd refer you to the prior study where that was actually detailed out. It was in there, and it was about $13,000. So that's about what I put in.
13, 1-3?
1-3.
Okay, that's good to know. So and as far as the savings on the number of driveways that are going to be managed, this year we are forecasted to have going down from 61 driveway to 37. And we are told this is going to be also a saving for the districts. Do you have an idea of what magnitude do we have here?
Yes, but I'll get to that later.
Okay.
Bertrand, maybe I can shortcut this just a little bit. I mean, it's a good discussion. I mean, it's appropriate discussion. I'm just referring back to our April board packet, page 213, where Eric did outline the staff's estimate of the cost of those things that you've just mentioned. It says in the current fiscal year, the district has spent approximately $40,000 in administrative time directly related to curation of data, testing, video documentation of all contracts, and administration of contracts. Now, 18% of that has to do with HOA contracts. And then there's some curation associated with HOA contracts, of course. So maybe something on the order of 20% or $8,000, or maybe $10,000 of the, 20% plus. Yeah, about $10,000 of the 40 has to do with HOAs. So that leaves $30,000, which is a potential reduction. Some of that doesn't go away because we're still doing some administration of contracts for KMA to one extent or another, but that should become a pass-through. I mean, in other words, it's an expense, but it shouldn't be part of the allocations to everyone else.
But
that's a pass-through. So that's the question I have then is, does this budget, and again, I don't know if this budget was a bottoms up built. So I'm starting from this past year's budget and saying, okay, $30,000 approximately off of that for savings in these areas, and get down to more like 670 rather than 680. But anyway, I just thought I'd like to ask.
I think
Eric's comment on that.
Yeah, that seems to track for me. And then for the remaining driveway contracts, why wouldn't we just add a charge for administering those contracts rather than absorbing?
That'd be like a pass-through cost.
Right.
Thanks for stealing my thunder, John. That was my proposal. Is that we just, well, maybe we can get through budget and then I'll explain that.
Yeah.
And just know that that's not included in here because it'll be an add-on. So that person will pay that direct fee. So it's, yeah.
So I have
bottom
one
line-
other, but I have one other budget question.
Well, may I just
Sorry.
just complete mine, Bob? Thanks.
Yeah.
And that is I just would like Eric to address, the April board packet, which outlined about $40,000 in administrative time. It's clear that we're still going to have about $10,000 of that, not counting the driveway stuff, for HOAs. So that leaves $30,000. If I'm going from last year's budget down, then that's more on the order of in the 660s or 670. The rest would be pass through. I mean, so the cost might be additional, but it'd be a pass through.
Well, if you look at actuals, it's lower than that, right?
I'm sorry.
If you took the 30,000 off of the year-end actuals, it's even lower.
Well, that's because we had a low snow year, and there, we can't bank on that from a budgeting perspective. I don't think. Well, that's a point of conversation too. But anyway, Eric, that was my question.
Yeah, I would like to add to that thinking.
Well,
So
can
30K.
Eric answer
Yeah, but
the
actually
question?
it's the same thing. So we can answer to both at the same time.
All
If
right.
30K is what the driveway cost to do the contract and the curation, so we need, and the testing, once we remove curation and testing, what is that number? Because if you want to pass it through, I mean, clearly 30K divided by 37, it's almost $900 just for managing the contract. So it's clearly out of line. So
No, there's a big chunk of that goes away because of Palisades and Juniper Ridge.
No. Okay. No, it's actually 61 driveway today and 37 once Palisade and Juniper Ridge. So it has to be reasonable. I mean, if you tell me you need to pay $200 to have your contract managed, I don't believe that's realistic and reasonable.
No, what I'm saying is some of the 30,000 goes away because we're not doing so many driveways. So it's not.
Okay, so now Eric
30,000
answer.
is a good number.
So what was the question?
No, okay, Eric, my question is, in April, you outlined in some detail $40,000 in administrative time related to contracts
Yes.
and curation. About 20% of that remains, which is about 8,000.
More than
maybe
20% remains.
Well, no, just a second. For the HOA contracts, there's 18% is HOA contracts, but there's also some curation associated with the HOAs. So I'm just rounding that up to 20%. That's $8,000. And I'm just rounding that to $10,000. So I'm just saying out of the 40, 10 obviously remains.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. I'm with you.
Now, in addition to that, there is some amount that remains
Right.
for administration of KMA driveway contracts.
Sure.
But that would not be part of the allocations. That would be a pass through. So when I'm
I can
looking
answer it
at
now if you want.
Yeah, so just to complete my thought, I was just starting at the 698 or whatever our
Gotcha.
budget was, minus 30 is 668. That's what, so plus the add-ons, plus the pass-through is what I was looking at.
Sure.
That's my question.
Okay, here we go. So starting with, okay, so I'm gonna actually change my screen so everybody can see what we're talking about. I just pulled up the give me a quick second. Is this the one I want? Yes, that's the one I want. Talking about this table, right, Eric? This is what you're asking about?
That's it.
There we go. Okay, everybody can see that now.
And
So
you see the $40,000 in the
yes,
first line above.
right up
Yes.
there. Clear as mud. Got it. Okay, so not all the curation goes away. We still have, if we have breakdowns, we're still getting those reports. So there's still curation, but we estimate that that's going to go down from 17% to 5%. So 5% remains. So of that, we're still going to have 5%. Okay. That's still going to be there. Testing, that'll go to 0. Okay. Video documentation, that remains. That is something we do every year. We video everybody's contract before the season starts and after the season starts. So when we get claims of damage, we have video documentation to review that. It has saved the district uncountable sums of insurance claims for false claims from property owners. This remains as well. Of this, as Bertrand pointed out, 37 out of 61 driveways is 60.6%. So of that 54%, 33% remains. Okay, so we add all those up. So 0.05, 0.03, 0.18, and 0.33 is 0.59. Okay, so that means we have 40% savings of this, which is $16,000. I used 13. Sorry.
Yes.
Just math.
Yes, but a portion of that, maybe I'm just conflating two things. One is what the budget is, and then the other is how much of that budget is allocated out to HOAs. Because some of that, the administration of driveway contracts, some of that is a pass-through fee. That's what I'm trying to say.
That is 100% in the revenue that we charge the HOAs.
So,
well, yeah, yes, I know. Okay. Well, when we get, okay.
So may I make a comment here?
Yeah.
So it's going to be difficult to parse all these things that Rick described, which are basically fixed cost for doing snow removal to each entity. So, but the big difference in the coming year is Juniper Ridge and Palisade are moving to the HOA pool. And so there is 37 contracts that are going to remain for this year with KMA. And so instead of, I think it's going to be very difficult to actually pinpoint a number. So I think we could go the other way. Instead of trying to assess what are still there and not there, is what about assessing the work that's going to be involved in managing this contract still independently this year. And I don't know what it is, $100 or I just don't know, but how much time do we need from staff? And so basically what is the cost? I don't believe that having individual contract for driveways costs something like $300 per driveway. I don't think that's realistic. Clearly, since based on the previous year, just go ahead. Tell me what is going to be that pass-through that you call. And I think you are going to have some resistance if you come up with a multiple hundred number. Just to prepare a contract, mail it, get it, and get the money, which is the thing that changed. The other stuff is still there. We're still doing the camera checking of the condition, the stakes, and all this stuff. All the stuff is going to remain the same. So what would be the pass-through fee?
We would estimate that on average, the driveways administration takes about 2 hours for each one, which is $100.
Okay, that sounds reasonable to me, but not 300-400. Yes.
Nobody said 300 or 400 except you.
Well, actually, no. Hey, I just did the calculation based on the number you put on the screen, and that's more than 300. So if you take the 40,000 and you go to that 33%, and then that's what, and you basically compute all that stuff, you end up with 350 or something like that.
Well, we're talking about $100, and a lot of the cost in the past has been chasing people down, getting them to pay, invoicing them multiple times. I think we decided that we would just have a penalty or just a cutoff, and we're going to simplify it. And that's the difference between $100 and $300 is we're not going to chase people down anymore. They either pay or they don't get plowed.
I'm totally in support of that. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I've just Anyway, it just seems to me that given the numbers that Eric has just given us, you know, that I think 26% is clearly a cost that's shared by everybody. That's a little over $10,000 out of the 40,000. Then there are, right, 26% of 40,000. That's a little over $10,000. The 18, the 3, and the 5. So that clearly stays in as an administrative cost.
No, actually, curation and testing are gone.
Well, Eric just said 5% of the curation will still be there.
Yes.
3% for video
actually, I'm in support of
documentation.
that. Yes,
18,
I support that.
That's
yes.
26%. That's
yes.
a little over $10,000. Okay, so I'm back to that leaves $30,000 as a potential savings, except that there's a cost of continued administration for the KMA driveways. But that's a pass-through. So it's a cost. Yes, it's in the budget, but it's a pass-through. Okay. And if that's $3,700, great. Then the budget comes down by less than 30,000, but by more than the 13 or 16,000 that's been discussed. That's what I'm saying. It just seems to me. Here's the bottom line: is it seems to me that our budget should be more in the neighborhood of 670. I know that's not that big of a difference from 680.
Well,
but that's
I think, Eric, what you're missing is I built the budget to repay the debt. So yes, it could go down to 670, but this budget is a holistic budget, not just a one myopic view of one little thing. I'm looking at the whole shooting match here, and snow removal owes $109,000 to electric. So if I set it at 680, can
we go back to the budget list?
That's why.
Yeah,
before we go, I have one more comment on this page. So basically, we are saying that 30,000 remain, and 30,000, and we are 33% would be the administration of 60 of the contract. So it's basically 10,000. So we are telling us that 10,000 is going to be needed to manage the 37 contract remaining. And if I divide 10,000 by 37, so that's $270. And honestly, I think this is not realistic, especially if we are taking that approach pushed by Bob that I support. We just send the contract to people. They have to pay it in time. And if they are not, too bad.
Okay, so what I think Eric is saying is, I mean, because there are two ways to do a budget, right? One is you start with what you were doing, and then you start subtracting or adding. The other way is you start bottoms up and start fresh.
That's what I suppose. Yeah, that's what I suppose. Yeah.
To what extent? To some extent, I think that's what Eric's done. He started, and gone up. So the question is, under expenses, I mean, the main savings under expenses right now is operating expenses, which is compared to the budget was $17,000 from 97 to 80 from budget to budget. And then the G&A allocation expense has gone down from 203 to 190. So I just want to be sure, basically all I'm trying to do is be sure that the savings that we said would occur if we didn't have to administer driveway contracts and curate driveways is incorporated into the budget. That's the only assurance I'm looking for, is that, so we can tell people, yes, that what we said would happen has happened. That's what I want.
So my concern, we are going to tell to people that we don't do any more curation, we don't do any more testing. We are eliminating a bunch of driveways that now are part of HOAs, and potentially maybe KMA will be the same next year. And then we are also diminishing the cost of administrating the contract, since we are no longer helping people making that little check. And so basically we send the letter by a date. If they don't, maybe you want to put 2 weeks grace, but that's it. And so that should also reduce cost. So basically we are doing all this stuff that reduce cost, and we are still saying, well, this is going to stay flat for 5 years. I think we need to show that the effort and the change that we are making are going to generate saving to everyone.
Well, I see what Eric, now I see, I'm looking at this. So I now understand that a good deal of our savings are offset by the $25,000 additional payback. You see
Yes,
that?
the payback of the loan.
So, right, payback of the loan. So
Yeah,
there are, just a second, Bertrand, stop interrupting, please. There is 50, yeah, so that's 25, that adds back $25,000. Again, I think rather than looking at the revenue line, I think it's important to look at the expenses line, and you can see the expenses do go down. It goes from 680 to 678 to 659, but then they start going back up again because of, well, whatever, inflation and so on. But that's what allows for a planning basis to be a constant revenue rather than an increasing revenue. Now, so I do have one other question.
okay, can I comment on that specific topic
Sure.
before we move to a different
Sure.
question? So I actually think we had actually a good year financially because of the small snow that we have, that we should be more aggressive. I would like to get this interfund revenue pay in 2 years, not 3 years. And we got 2.5 years. And yes, once this is paid back, that's something to the tune of 60,000. I don't understand why we cannot have some savings. I do agree that until we pay back, we should just keep the line until it's paid back. But once we pay back with all the savings that we're putting in the system, I know there is a CPI increase, but I don't see it here. I don't think that 680 should stay like that. Yeah, it should be a bit more smart.
The CPI, as Eric pointed out to you multiple times, is right in here. Don't know how much clearer we can make it.
Okay, so if that's all built in, that means that in this case, it really shows that we are going overboard because the CPI doesn't show up at all in the budget. It just stays static.
Right, because I don't know how would
Well, here,
we're saving money elsewhere.
and you have to buy another track list. We have to budget for that. That is why we're keeping that. That's why we're building this. That's why we're building reserves so that we can buy that in 3 years.
so the way I look at it is we can pay for inflation, we can pay off the loan, and we can pay for new track lists, all while keeping our revenues even. Right? I mean, that's a pretty good statement.
Yeah. Can I ask a background question of what's the impact of the interfund loan? I mean, what's the motivation to pay it early or to defer payment?
It's just never been paid back. We are going to have to pay it back eventually. And since we can set the budget this way, I thought it would just be it's a board discretion how we want to pay it back. But, the board has made statements multiple times and has affirmed it via policies that we want each fund to stand on its own. And that means getting loans paid back.
Mm-hmm. But it's really paying ourselves back, right?
Yeah, it actually is apparently
Not
state
really.
law that one department can't fund another department, and if it can loan money, but there's got to be a plan to pay it back, and with a reasonable amount of time and with a reasonable amount of interest payment.
Yeah, at commercial rates.
I forgot interest on that, so this will change a little bit. I'll have to find out what the.
So there is a motivation to pay earlier then.
So actually, I have two questions on that.
Yes.
So first, the interest are built in that amount that we do. So I'm surprised it doesn't change over time. If we owe that amount, I would expect an impact due to the interest. And then my next question is, just above the loan payback line, there is an interfund allocation. Can you explain me what it is?
I don't recall what that is.
So
I don't recall what that is. I'd have to look into that.
So that's bizarre because it goes on forever. So it's not a big amount, but I just wonder, so what is it, and why does it goes forever?
Yeah, we could ask Kelly that. It's not a big amount, but it's.
So I have a budgeting strategy question. This looks like it's cash accounting. And is that how we actually run it, or is that just how you're displaying it here?
That's just how I'm that's how I'm displaying it here.
Okay, because all right.
So my other main question is, 2 years ago when we had the big snow, was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we had the big snowfall and we had a bad start to our snow removal season, and we had to get well planned, and we all decided that what we should be budgeting for is, a normal, well, I don't know what's normal anymore, but a 400 to 500 inch season. And so that's why we've brought on full seasonal staff, and made sure that we had enough for all the shifts, evening and nighttime and daytime shifts and so on. Then we've, of course, the next 2 years were low snow years. And I know Eric really did a good job this year by being able to furlough some people, periodically, so that we were saving some money, and also to use them on other departments. But it's just a question. I just want to either affirm or discuss. Do we still think it's the right thing to do? Should we budget for whatever it is, a 35 to 40 foot snow year? Is that what we should be doing?
Yeah, but that's a good question. But I still also think we need to think about what we communicate through that budget to the community. And I think with all the, so we had a small snow year, and it's great because it allows us to pay back, to win ourselves from the interfund, and actually pay back a big chunk of it. And we are going to do that again next year. Hopefully, I think we should do it in 2 years. And then from then, yes, there is some capital planification that needs to be done. But since we were able to do all these things, I think and we are doing all these additional saving measures, I'd like to show that this is modulating more, and we are making effort to be cost effective and to do a good work on that budgeting. For me, putting a blanket 680 doesn't fly very well. It doesn't seem to be a lot of thought was there. Yeah.
What do you think it should go down or up? I don't understand who wouldn't be happy to have our charges for snow removal be able to stay flat for 5 years as opposed to constantly going up? Why isn't this good news?
Because, okay, back again. We are paying back. We don't need, we are weaned out from the interfund loan. We don't need more money. More than that, we are now generating a surplus that allows us to pay fairly quickly that loan, because 2.5 years is actually pretty quick. I mean, we could say longer, we could say lower, but it is actually showing that we are doing all that stuff. And then we are adding more saving measures. But nevertheless, we are still going to charge the same thing for 5 years. I think after we pay off the interfund loan, it'd be a good communication gesture to show that we actually are able to come down a little bit. And not too much, because there is capital expenditure, but I'd like more modulation, yes.
Here's what I've heard so far. We're able to cut our overall charges for snow removal by $13,000. We're able to hold revenue flat while paying off our debt service and purchasing needed new equipment with cash which is one of the things that we're doing here. And we have a $30,000 savings in overhead, and we're going to charge around $3,700 to administer the snow removal contracts. I mean, to me, that's all good news.
So the last one you say, how much to administrate?
$3,700. That's 37
okay.
contracts times $100.
Okay, so that, yeah.
Okay.
I think if I give a little historical context here, in the past, when we'd have a light winter, we would refund the homeowners associations to a certain extent, but we never funded for equipment replacement, which we're doing now. I think that's, in terms of community perception, I think I would emphasize that.
Yeah, good point, Peter.
Okay, I think we've had a lot of discussion about this. While I'd be happier with a 670 budget rather than a 680 budget, I do understand we're decreasing a bunch of things, but we're also increasing our loan payback by $25,000, which are offsetting. So I get it. I know Bertrand's not happy with the constant 680. He'd like to see that possibly going down some, but I think that
it could be up later as well. I mean, I just think that showing the community that we are making progress on our financial to the tune that we can make going down for 1 year would be when we stop paying the loans. I would love that. And then if we need to go a little higher again, I think on the communication, because people look at that and they say, well, they charge whatever they want. And so I think communication wise, showing the community when we finish paying back our loan that we can have a little would be a gesture showing that we are really paying attention here.
Well, I think I think in terms of graphics oftentimes, and I think that it would be quite easy to show a flat revenue line and then what happens with the expenses compared to that. You know,
okay,
where there's a drop off this year,
okay.
and then what our cash needs are and so on.
I can buy that. I would just ask the communication committee to come up with this nice graphic so people understand. I agree.
Okay, I think.
Bob, are you okay with that?
I wasn't in the mood to sign up for more work, but I'll do it.
I can help. I can help.
All right. All right. It's a team. We'll do it.
So I guess I'd like maybe to entertain a motion here to accept the $680,000 budget for the coming year.
Yeah, I still have not got an answer about where the interest back to the interfund loan reside.
It's not included in here. It'll need to be added, and we'll add it. It's going to reside probably right there on that last.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
so it's not
be a
there.
small. It'll be a fairly small number at what the commercial rates are, but it would be a number for sure.
Yeah.
And the board sets the rate, I think, so we can discuss that in finance, make a recommendation, and calculate it, and set it out for 2023.
Okay. So is there a motion to accept this overall budget?
So moved. This is Bob. Bob moves to accept.
Is there a second to that motion? Step right up. Second to that motion.
John moves to second.
Okay. Roll call, Peter.
Rickert,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot, is that an aye or decided yet?
I'm still troubled by the fact that we do not, once we finish paying off, we do not show an impact on the budget. I understand that the cash flow, and I understand actually the value of a static budgeting, knowing that it helps people plan for ahead. So I'm going to vote yes reluctantly. Aye.
It was aye with a with a qualification, is what you're saying? Okay, I just want to make sure I got this right. Schroeder,
Aye.
Thornburg, aye.
Okay, good. Part one settled. Part two is what portion of this budget should be allocated to KMPUD, and it's important to come to that decision because it trickles through to all the G&A expense lines and all the other departments. So Eric, do you want to talk about that?
Right. So when the budget was originally set, I found old emails. It was just an arbitrary 10% assigned to the district. There was no logic or rationale behind it. So one thing, you know, we talked about last time was using 4 years of data. In thinking about it more robustly, there has been significant changes to polygons for quite a few HOAs that were in that 4 years, but were not, or marginally in the 3 years. So the first thing is I'd recommend using a 3-year average, not a 4. Many HOAs have reduced their contract size, and a 4-year average doesn't recognize that. So that's the first thing, is if we look at a 3-year average instead of a 4. So if we look at the 3-year average, to answer your specific question, Eric, the CSB, Lava Rock, whatever you want to call it, is using 1.9% of as an HOA, its minutes are 1.9%. So what that means is, and I'm going to share something different now. So this is a 3-year average, the 3-year average of minutes, the 3-year average of percentages.
Feel free to make the spreadsheet slightly larger.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, and feel free to shout out if I should be doing that. I appreciate it, Bob.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So anyway, using the 3-year average, this is what it comes out for each of the HOAs. So assuming a $6,800,000 budget, this is the proportionate share of CSB Lava Rock. So what does that mean? Where did, and in the prior year, as you saw on your board packet, it was 61,035. So what does that mean? So if I took 9% of 680,000 and allocated the difference between 9% and this about 2%, 1.9%, where does that go? And it goes based on the proportional share of your percentages. So if you know, East Meadows has a bigger share than Edelweiss. And this is showing you directly what the KMPUD reduction, the appropriate, correct, logical reduction, where it goes and why. So that is one of the reasons contracts are going up, because we're correcting that. Now, that being said, what that means is KMPUD's overall G&A costs go down, and that trickles out through all the departments. So all customers will see a benefit from this reduction in their utility, you know, essentially in the utilities, but the snow removal sees it here.
Yeah, it's all KMPUD customer versus only the driveway and HOAs owner.
Correct. All customers, and every single one of those customers is a snow removal customer, whether it's through an HOA or private.
But the benefit on the G&A apply to not the SR customer, to everybody in the community.
That is correct.
Yeah. So that's making basically a smaller gain to more people. And but the truth is the numbers are the numbers. So I'm still a bit uneasy with the fact that we only allocate Lava Rock for this 60,000, because contrary to what Eric seems to suggest, I think the fact that the department are using the SR equipment has actually has a cost. I mean, equipment is very expensive. So I think I'd like to add a fee for that, for the ability for the other department to use the snow removal equipment for their own benefit.
And I would actually add to that, Bertrand. it's also a mechanic's time.
I agree. Yeah.
You know, so there, I don't know how much it is. I don't, and I don't
Yeah.
want Eric to be, you know, spinning circles around trying to
Yeah.
calculate
Okay.
what it is. I think, you know, just a nice round number of some sort would be appropriate, but I do think it should be a bit higher.
Yeah.
Just to reflect what you've just said.
How about 3% instead of 1.9?
Yeah, something like that. Yes.
I mean, you could vote on it now and just have it set. I mean, the board. could-
I would be happy with that. I mean, it's just to acknowledge that equipment is used and mechanics time is used.
Yes.
I mean, I can redo this spreadsheet with just setting this at a hard 3%, and then it'll roll through, reduce
Right.
these proportionately.
Right.
Yes.
I think that's fine. I think anything more than 1% is
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
No, I mean, I think,
sensible, but it's, I mean, it's our, you know, it's a voluntary service, right? So we can, I mean, in the olden days, they just pick numbers out of the air. So I guess we can do whatever we want.
We picked them out of the snow, not out of the air. I want to stand
Well, the snow
corrected.
comes from the air, Bob.
All right.
Not thin
Okay.
air, thin snow.
There we go.
So why don't you put 3 there and see what's going on?
These are populated based on this, so I'd have to hard code it back in, and that's going to be
Okay,
more than I'm
okay.
going to do right now. But I'm happy to do that and bring that back when I have the, I mean, we
Yeah.
have the budget set. If we set that and everything else will roll through, then I know what the contracts will be. And then, yeah. So
And since we are on that, I'd like to bring another topic, which is
yeah. Well, since we're on that, can I finish maybe, please?
Okay.
yeah. Go ahead, Eric.
I have a suggestion. I hope I'm trying to simplify things because we've gotten so far down in the weeds, and I'm trying to simplify. I would suggest that rather than go through lots of ministrations about how we allocate those 37 driveways, that we simply ask KMA, how much do you want to charge each driveway? They tell us, they reduce their contract by that amount, whatever they say it is. Let them pick how their driveways are charged. This doesn't get into a CC&R issue, doesn't get into their bylaw issue. We negate that entire, you know, specious argument. What we come up with, we say, here's your contract. I know this is going to change, but here's your contract. It's $234,000. How much of that do you want to go to driveways, and how much do you want to go to the 30, each of the 37? We'll add on our $100 administrative fee, and we're done.
And then there's guidance though, right? Because all the information all the work that Bob has done and so on, there's guidance for that, should they choose to use it.
We can share it with them, absolutely.
But then we administer the contracts. We fill out the contracts, we get them signed back, we do the invoicing, we collect the money.
Yeah.
Right. So we're
let
still
me-
administering the contracts. It's just we're looking to KMA to say how much.
Right.
I thought the issue was with KMAs that they didn't feel competent to do that yet.
No, they didn't
Well-
want to allocate it. They didn't feel that they could assess driveways. I have all the emails. It was just, they didn't feel they could assess driveways under their current CC&Rs for snow removal. This takes that whole specious argument away.
So let me first comment again what I was going to say on that. So actually, I'm very pleased to see this table with this concept of using the last 3 years. I totally agree with Eric on that. There are so many differences in the landmark and how things were operating, including Snowcrest, that was actually drastically reduced because Vail is doing their front side. So using 3 years average is actually much better. And we'll talk about that. Bob and I did some quality control on the data, and it really supports that concept. And the second thing is to look at these things, including with driveway. The beauty of that is it takes away all the controversy, and any change we make for the driveways is only going to impact the HOAs that included instead of spreading on everyone. So this is really the way to go, in my opinion. So we get more on details when we talk about that later, but that's the proper architecture, in my opinion. Bob, do you want to say anything on that?
No, I think you're reflecting both of our opinions, and I think Eric has reflected that in this chart as well. So I think the alignment of the stars is remarkable.
3 stars.
I believe in the book of Revelation, this is the fifth sign of the apocalypse. So everybody better plan accordingly.
So, yeah, so, okay, so the idea here, what you're putting forward is that we would ask KMA to give us the numbers. We would give them guidance or the information that we have, but then they would
Thank you.
provide us with the dollar amounts for each driveway, which driveways and which dollar amounts. We would then administer those contracts on their behalf.
So
Yes? Is that it? Is that Eric? Is that it? Do I have that right, Eric?
That
Did I
is
say that
correct.
right?
We would give them the total contract price, and then they would tell us,
And guidance.
we would give them the data. They would tell us how much they want the HOA share to be, how much they want the driveway share to be, and how much they want the individual driveways there within to be. And we would bill based on their what they want, which is, and then we would add an administrative fee of $100.
Is this, for how long would we continue to do this? Just 1 year for?
Well, the board
Just this year?
direction from before is just this year. And next year everybody goes to the same model.
Well, we have everybody on the same model. The only difference is that we're offering some administrative support.
Right.
Yeah. For a fee.
For a fee, right?
Okay. Well,
I don't know because I'm not anymore on KMA board, but I have the feeling this is going to be well accepted by KMA.
Good.
okay. Well, then that approach then sounds to be satisfactory.
I just think there's one major problem. What are we going to be talking about?
Oh,
A special meeting next year?
We're going to have to shorten all the meetings. We're going to have to reconsider the board pay. I mean, it's a big deal.
yeah, all right.
I mean, I have clear direction to build everything now. I'm clear on it all. There's no ambiguity, which is great.
All right, let's rock and roll.
So is that someone make a motion that that's what we're going to do?
Well,
No, I mean, I think
I would like one piece of information. I don't know if others would want it or not. But I mean, we can explain some of these increases in contracts. As we've already discussed, which is good. But I think it would be useful to basically to see the calculation of the averages. That's we have it in every other year, but just using the 3 years.
That was on his previous chart.
Yeah, it was on.
Yeah,
No, that's just the averages. I don't see this many minutes this year, this many minutes this year, this many minutes this year.
Yeah.
That chart that we've always had.
Yes, you do. Hold on. Sorry.
It's backup.
So you want the details? Yeah,
It's just backup to the conclusion.
Hold on. It's there. It's just hidden.
Aha.
It's all there.
Yeah, we need.
There's a reason I'm in row A, and AB.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
So I can share that out. I can do that in the final.
If you can just share that out.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all there.
But you do that after you change the Lavarock allocation.
That is correct.
To 3%, so we can see the numbers. And then I think that's what I'd like to see before we go to a motion.
Well, I think what would be helpful too, at least for the bigger HOAs, would be to do the math for them to say, this is the change year to year, and what is basically comprising their new costs. Because when we just send the HOAs a number, like if you send East Meadows 205, they're just going to look at this year and last year, and they're going to be upset. And I think if we can walk through the math and say there was a CSB allocation that was wrong for the last few years, and we're resolving that and so forth, it will be better received.
There needs to be some narrative for where there's big changes. There needs to be some narrative. And I've mentioned that to Eric. There needs to be some explanation to go along with it.
And we can do that in the cover letter, reflect everything we talked about today, summarize it.
So one of the key factors for East Meadow is the fact that East Meadow had this, I won't say special treatment, but different treatment for the driveway. And the driveway hourly rate is different. I mean, in last year, it's almost not double, but 60, 70% more than the HOA rate. So basically, they were benefiting from that. So once we move everyone to this model, they don't have this benefit anymore. And actually, I have some plot that show that, and I could share that to you.
Yeah, and I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that's necessary, but I can tell you from all the, because I've looked at these numbers until I'm literally blue in the face. And the conclusion I came to was that the buckets that we used previously for the driveway and for KMPUD, if you convert those to minutes in the same proportion as with the HOAs, we apparently inflated those minutes substantially for those two entities. And now,
what do you mean by inflating the minutes? The minutes.
Well, basically, the $76,000 that went to driveways last year represented X amount of minutes that actually was too much. That's I'm saying the same thing you are, but it's just saying it in a different way. It's
we charge more per hour for driveways than we do for HOAs.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
that's
right.
The average for driveways was about $1,000 an hour, and the average for HOAs was $450 an hour. And that was just a relic of taking the pricing before we looked at all of this and just moving it forward and adjusting.
But these are the explanations that need to be provided. Yes.
So that has a big impact on East Meadow.
Yep. Okay, so I think that we are approving of the 3-year methodology. We're approving of the 3% for KMPUD. And we're going to get the detail, the expanded spreadsheet. And so then we can, at a later meeting, do a final approval of all the allocations.
And then we mentioned that we were only looking at the HOA with driveway numbers, because that's alleviate all the problems, and then we don't need the calibrations, we don't need the transit time. Actually, initially, transit time was something that was paid by the district for all HOAs and driveways when they were actually done independently. So when we moved to the GPS model, that's when the HOA with driveway was started to be charged for the access to the driveways, and that was impacting everybody. And so with this model that we talked about earlier, this problem goes away. But
And I want to answer Bertrand's earlier question. I got a text back from Kelly. So on her day off, I texted her to find what is the interfund allocation.
Yes.
It is the allocation of electric and loan interest, anything that is not included in the G&A. It's a proportionate share between funds. I know she's explained this multiple times before, but there it is again.
So can you say it one more time?
I'm reading. It is the allocation of electric and loan interest and anything that is not included in G&A. Okay,
so there are little stuffs that are basically she could not put that in the G&A and just place them here. Yes. And so each department has the same, or it's just specific to SR?
Every department, well, not every department. I don't think fire has it for a different reason, but almost all departments, if you look at the budget that was presented by Kelly at the summary sheets last meeting, you can go back to that. You'll see an interfund allocation in a lot of funds.
Okay.
Okay, so to review, I think we've agreed on the 680. We had a motion past that. We've agreed on the 3% for KMPUD. We've agreed on a 3-year average because that reflects the period of time where there've been the fewest changes in polygons and so on. And we're going to get the detail or the expanded spreadsheet to review, which will then lead to approval of allocations at a future meeting. Do I have that correct?
Yes, and just to be clear, I'm going to throw the 3% in each of the 3 years, not in the average. So it'll come out, but I'm going to do it year by year at 3%. Does everybody agree with that? Not at the end, at the average?
Yeah, that's.
Bertrand?
Can't quite picture that.
Yeah, it actually should not make a difference.
It shouldn't, but sometimes things get wonky. So I just want to make sure that if I do it that way, we're not going to find some other nitpick.
Nitpick.
Is it?
You want me to nitpick? Go ahead.
Does the sun rise in the east?
Just if we look at the percentage of time for lava rock, if we go back 1 year, it was 2.992%. This year happens to be 1.63. So is it 1% more than what it is, or we're just rounding to 3% and leaving it? I don't mean to ask a question about any year except the next year, but that's what I'm asking. Is the math to always fix it at 3% regardless of its usage? Or do we add 1% to it?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a good point. It's an average. So, 1 year it'll, go from 1.8 to 3, and 1 year it'll go from 2.8 to 3.
What's the 3-year average on?
1.9.
Okay.
So I don't know that adding 1% each year is doing. I just would set them to a hard 3. That's what I heard.
Regardless of how much time.
Correct. It should work out. It should.
Yeah, I just want to know how to program it. That's all.
I would just say set it at 3%.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have a summary of then actions and agreements here?
I think so. I think the budget is as it is. We will hard code lava rock CSB at 3%, and we will calculate off the 680, and then communications committee will help develop a cover letter going to the HOAs, and then we will reach out to KMA and tell them this is their total contract amount. Let us know how much you want to split between your HOA and your driveway customers, and how much you want to allocate to each driveway. And we will share whatever data they would like with them. I think Bertrand has everything at this point as well. So
I just have one other question. I'm just
and I'll share the 3 years too.
Yeah, just to be really clear, it seems to me that the 680 is the overall budget, and then the $3,700 would come off of that. So the allocations would be actually 66.3, because the $3,700 is just a pass through.
Mm-hmm.
You want to subtract it from the 680,000?
Yeah, because we went through the whole conversation about where the 680 came from. It's covering costs.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And so the 3,700 should just be $3,700 of that should just be a pass through and not allocated to everybody else.
Yeah, 676.3.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
What I'll do just to capture it is I'll add a line.
Yes.
Private, snow removal driveway administration, and I'll just put the 3,700 in there. So it'll still be 680 total, but it'll be its own line. Does that work? And then I'll just reduce.
That's perfect.
I'll reduce this.
Yeah, perfect.
3,700. Add a new line somewhere in here.
Yeah, that does it. Okay.
So so this will still be 680, Eric. It won't be 676.3 since I'll just do
correct.
it. Okay.
Yeah, correct. Okay. Any final words on snow removal until next time?
I would like to talk about the process a little bit. So I would like to ask the general manager, when he stumbles on something that does not make sense, that he reach out to the people from IT committee instead of spending a lot of his time with strategies that just would have been a waste of time if we had talked about it today. So I just want, and also when there is a staff report, I'd like to know, I know Brandy is doing that, is a prepare by, and I'd like to have that information as well, so we know who has done that work. So that's the 2 comments on the process I'd like to make. And again, if things doesn't seem to fly, and one of the analysis you've made was obviously off the rail, you should have contacted either Bob or myself to try to see what was wrong here, instead of spending so much time to try to come up with a different system.
I guess I don't know what that's all about.
Yeah,
But if you read,
I manage
the staff report is based on a totally flawed interpretation of the calibration. It actually applies, the calibration is applied to the HOA instead of the driveway time, and then everything was off. I mean, and then Eric come up with a way to try, a complex way to try to use the trackless data. So it was even more computing and more difficulties to sort out this thing. So I just, before issuing that, if it doesn't seem to fly, I mean, I really, I mean, last meeting, there was already some confusion. I tried to start explaining and you said, no, I get it. But if it doesn't fly, please try to contact someone so we don't waste our time and your time on something that is just a misinterpretation or confusion.
And the other one was you'd like to see who prepares the various reports.
Yes, the staff. Into our packet. You know, and it's prepared by staff. I'd like to know who are actually involved. Yeah.
And for
I know,
why is that important to you?
But why is it important? Because it is important. I just want to know who is the author of the thing, because so I can actually probably reach to him as well. So
well, no, I mean, as far as we're concerned, the author is Eric.
Okay, so if there is no author, it'd be Eric, the author.
Eric's responsible for these. He may ask his staff to prepare something and help it, but it's his review, it's his signature on it, it's his stamp.
I mean, okay. So when Brandy did the electrical storage staff report, first she said she prepared it, and then obviously there was, in my opinion, major flaw in that report. Eric said, "Oh, I didn't do it. It's Brandy did it." So
it's as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. But that's what I was told.
As far as I'm concerned, it's Eric. It may be that.
Yeah. The buck stops there. I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. I think we've done a good job on the snow removal. I congratulate everybody on that. And I think with that,
there is one more comment actually I'd like to make on the snow removal for the HOAs, and that based on several analyses that we've made, Bob and I. I did analysis that was based on standard deviation, and Bob did analysis looking at the hourly rate using basically the cost. If we use the past 3 years for next year's budget, there are still, most of the big change happened 4 years ago, but there are still some that actually had made significant change 2 years ago, 3 seasons ago. And so in our analysis, they just pop up with really out of whack hourly rate or standard deviation. So, and I'm going to name them. This is Sun Meadow, 2 and Sun Meadow 3-4, there was actually a significant landmark change for those at the beginning of the 2 seasons ago. Another one is Unit 3, and another one is Whiskey Tower. And if you look at the data for these 4, and I believe all 4 had significant landmark change and I was discussing with Eric at that time, and that basically either benefits them significantly or very detrimental to some of them. For example, Sun Meadow 3-4 has an hourly rate in excess of $1,000. This is the only one who has that. So I think for these 4, if Eric can concur there was significant landmark change, I would advocate to only use the last 2 years for these 4 HOA, so they are not either benefiting or being penalized in an outlandish fashion. And maybe Bob wants to comment on that based on the analysis he made. Yeah.
No, it's just that I don't know what year the landmarks were changed, but just if it's a major landmark change and that would perturb the average, that we'd ask Eric to make an adjustment if he thought that was appropriate. Eric, I just don't remember which years some of those changed.
It varied.
Yeah.
I'm just happy we landed on something we all agreed on with a 3-year average. And if we want to add more administrative time to go back and do this, I'm happy to do it if that's the board's direction. But I thought we kind of closed this out and we're moving forward without going back into the minutia, but I'm happy to change whatever the board wants.
I think the Sun Meadow 3-4 is paying way more than it should because of that.
I guess we should look at that when we see the numbers, because
okay, so
I can't comment on it because I don't see the numbers.
I will bring an analysis on this 4 HOA. Okay. And Eric, if you could check for landmarks. I mean, I remember the discussion I had with you for these 4 HOAs, and they really show extreme variation compared to anyone else. And since the landmark was, I mean, Sun Meadow 3 and 4, it's a flip, you know. I mean, they basically, there's a good chunk that went from one HOA to the other. And then we are asking that HOA that was already penalized for many years to still be penalized this year. And I think it's an easy fix. You just use the 2-year average for this 4 HOA. And I will document this information.
Okie doke. I think that ends the discussion at this point. Am I right? Does anyone else have any comments they'd like to make? Well, with that, then I think we can adjourn to our next regular meeting, which is on Saturday, June 12th at 8 a.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.